talked about a specific topic. But this time, Teng has a lot of experience across the whole domain of AI and crypto. So this one is going to be awesome. Teng, you want to talk a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. So, um, yeah, I guess I can just do a very quick intro. I've been in tech for like more than 10 years now. And, back in 2015, I was part of the founding team of a healthcare AI company.
Mhm.
And basically what we were doing was we would take, we were working a lot with healthcare data. So basically we'll take like very unstructured, like
Mhm.
clinical notes, doctor's notes, mostly for psychiatric patients. And then we would do like use NLP techniques, machine learning, very traditional machine learning techniques to really extract like valuable insights from these notes. And then we build platforms that basically help pharma companies like conduct their research in a better way. So I spent 6 years there running one of the lines of businesses. Very interesting times. But then I got crypto pilled back in like 2020, realized that blockchains was going to transform um, all these different industries. And I felt very much aligned to the mission of Web3, where basically, permissionless ownership goes back to the users and individuals. So I knew I needed to spend more time there. And while I was in Web3, I joined Delphi Digital, which is basically a research consulting and early stage venture firm in the space. Spent 2.5 years there. Was really fun time. Worked with a lot of amazing colleagues
Mhm.
who are pretty much the best in their field. I ran our research team that's more focused on the consumer side of things. So NFTs, a bit of gaming, consumer applications, and it was fun. But sometime in the later part of 2023, I was looking at what was happening in the AI space outside of crypto, and I
Mhm.
think something really struck me. I sort of realized that, hey, this is probably the most um, exciting and probably the biggest technology paradigm change that I'll probably ever see in my lifetime, right? And things were just going exponential in the AI space. So same thing, right? I knew that okay, hey, I needed to learn as much as I could about what was happening. So I left Delphi and decided to embark on a journey to figure out what was going on. Um, and along the way, I started looking at crypto AI projects. Bittenser um, being one of them. I was pretty
Mhm.
fascinated by its model. And then, I did what I thought I always did best was basically to write. And I felt that writing helps me to consolidate my thoughts, my
Mhm.
thinking, and started posting a bit about like what was going on in the crypto AI space. Eventually started a weekly newsletter that rounds up all the important developments in the space. That was in sometime in I think April or May of last year. So it's been quite an amazing journey. It's been over 7 months, and honestly, I didn't actually expect like crypto AI to really take off so
Mhm.
quickly. Like for most of last year, it was pretty much like just bubbling underneath the surface. There were people who
Mhm.
were interested in the space, but it's only after the Truth Terminal and the Goats stuff came that suddenly we could see that the level of interest,
Yep. Yep.
people who wanted to know more about crypto AI just took off like so quickly. I think even today, we're still seeing a very huge burst of interest and demand. So it's very
Mhm. Mhm.
exciting times.
Yep. Yep. Definitely. So funny you talk about how I used to do machine learning for medical, because that's how I got started with machine learning as well. The first project I did was about identifying tumor, gray matter, white matter, cerebrospinal fluid from MRIs and fMRIs. And after that, I just went deeper and deeper: computer vision, self-driving cars, and finally got built by crypto, kind of like you did. So yeah,
Right.
that's pretty cool. Um, Okay, so let's talk about something more recent. So these AI agents had a lot of mindshare just a few days ago, and then came the Trump token, the Melania token, and a lot of people got into it. Most of us couldn't. What are your comments on that?
Yeah, this whole craze around AI agents, it's really interesting to me. And I think one of the if I think back about like why is really taken off and why how it's doing today, I think a few things like come to mind, right? Firstly is that AI agents are novelty, right? They're able to do things that we used to think was magic like before, and that's why
Mhm,
that captured a lot of interest. And AI agents are almost like to me the consumer application of crypto and AI. A lot of
mhm,
teams in crypto and AI are building very heavy infrastructure focused protocols and projects, which is a bit more difficult for normal people who are not deep in the space or who understand much about the space to really get into. Whereas AI agents, it's very clear, it's very cool. You can interact with them, you can actually do something cool with them. And so I
yeah,
think we saw this like huge proliferation of like AI agents that's coming up, that came up over the last couple of months. And the first few agents were really interesting, right? They were like live streamers, entertainment kind of like AI agents. But
mhm,
as we I think the problem that we are seeing, that we're facing today, and I think the reason why many of these like AI agent tokens are languishing a little bit is because, um, as with crypto and with most things in crypto, every time something happens, like everyone just copies it and just tries to
mhm,
do something in it. And the criticism I think that we have today around these things is that these like so-called like crypto AI agents are basically like a Twitter bot with a token that's
mhm.
tied to it, right? Is
Yeah,
there
yeah,
anything more than that? And I must say that this criticism is fair for like maybe like 90% of like the AI agents out there, right? What does the token actually do? It's mostly a meme coin that is traded depending on how cool some they think that particular agent is, but it doesn't have any very clear sort of like value accrual kind of
yeah.
mechanisms.
But
I think it's still go ahead.
I would say the keyword there is currently. It's the starting point, and this is the worst these agents are ever gonna be, and this is just gonna get better and better and better. I mean, we have seen in like just last few months how better these agents have become, and probably DeFi and DeSci has been touted as the next meta. So yeah, I think this criticism is fair, like you said. Uh, but for only for the current agents, and these agents are just gonna get better and better. And one other interesting thing I've seen, crypto has been able to come up with better like more innovative agents than I've ever seen in web 2, because there you only have like ChatGPT, Claude, and some other GPT variants of like ChatGPT. But in crypto you have these agents with their own personalities doing god knows what on chain, off chain, posting on Twitter. And yeah, I don't think this kind of chaos is possible in web 2.
Yeah, I know I'm totally with you, man. Like crypto has always been the place where people experiment at the edges. Like even like with DeFi, people were just trying all these different things that would never sort of like be done in a more traditional sort of setting. So same thing I think is happening with AI agents. People are experimenting with some of these stuff, experimenting with um, tokenization, experimenting with fundraising methods using tokens in order to fund some of these like very interesting experiments around AI agents. And I think that's cool because like I've heard it's also gotten some of the more traditional like AI people to sort of like pay attention, see what's going
Yeah.
on. And I feel we're pushing some of the boundaries in this area. Like how do we deal with like AI agents? How do agents and humans interact? What are the boundary conditions for these AI agents? What are actions that are acceptable? What are not acceptable? And I feel
Mhm.
like we are probably going to find this out um, faster in the Web3 space than the Web2 space, where I think many people are building stuff that's more like enterprise focused of like use cases for some of these things, um, which is always an interesting part. But yeah, I'm always like I kind of like to always see both sides of the things, and
Mhm.
there's also a lot of like scary stuff that's happening with that
Yeah.
agents. So people got to be careful too.
Yeah, I would also compare this to how computers became more commonplace, because early models were really costly and only few people could afford them. But then they made the cheaper ones, and people had access to them, and then they were able to come up with all sorts of applications. And from this chaos, we got a lot of essential tools that are even there today. And even for the ones that died, over time someone else took their place, and that led to the kind of computation we have these days. So I think crypto is kind of spearheading that movement in terms of agents, because the kind of interesting agents the crypto has come up with, I haven't seen anywhere. And talking about the agents, one of the two of the major frameworks that have been used to build those are Eliza and virtuals. Since probably you're the guy who has delved into the two the most, uh, I would be happy to hear your thoughts for our listeners.
Yeah, sure. So, Virtuals was, I would say, they were pretty visionary because they've been building this since the earlier part of this year, like even before anyone thought that these AI agents were going to be like a real thing and cool, right? And so that
Mhm,
means that when things started really taking off, like they were in the right place at the right time, and they had a product that they have been
mhm,
building for the last like 1 2 years already, right? And it was there out there, and so they were the first like major platform that allowed people to launch AI agents
mhm.
in a very simple way and
Yep,
almost
yep.
without, for many cases, without needing to do any coding as well. You can just go to their website, um, set a few parameters, and then launch your token, right? And there were many agents that sort of like did it that way.
Mhm,
Um, so and they're pretty cool. They're still sort of like building right now. But I would say virtual takes a very methodical approach. So basically, a lot of like the core development of the main protocol itself, like is driven by the
mhm,
core team, right? So basically, they keep pushing out new features that allows like developers to do more interesting things, and it's a lot driven by the vision of the
mhm,
founding team,
mhm,
and that's pretty cool. AI 16Z, or basically which basically created the ELIZA sort of like framework, takes
mhm,
a slightly different approach with that. Right? So basically, they are a fully open source AI agent framework, and basically the most interesting thing which I thought was very amazing was um, the speed of development and contribution to the for this particular open source framework. So I'm sure like many of you might have seen like people talking about these like GitHub stars, and it was just like it was probably like I think the top one or two like trending projects
yeah, yeah.
on GitHub like over to last year, just because of the level of interest in it, which to me was pretty amazing. Like sometimes you look
Mhm,
at the protocol, you just refresh it a day later, suddenly there are a lot of like how many all these new features that are included into this. So it's very much that sort of like open source crowdsourcing sort of approach in terms of improving the protocol. What it does also though, it makes it pretty messy. So there are just all these different things, plugins, all different things that people are building, not enough documentation, some things don't work, a couple of bugs here and there, which is a very sort of like teething problems that happens with something like this. But I think the main difference is with Eliza is that you do need a fair bit of like coding and technical abilities to launch an agent using Eliza
mhm,
compared to virtuals. And although I do think like the AI16Z is looking towards building some kind of like launch pad that allows even more people to launch these agents without using some kind of like no code platform. So I think that's pretty
mhm,
cool. But in any case, while these two were sort of like the two like major frameworks that came up, I think like it's going to be a very fierce competition. Like
yeah, yeah.
so many of these frameworks have sort of like come up over these last um, couple of weeks, couple of months, and I think there are going to be many more. Right? So it's hard to say who is going to be the winner in this space, even in such early days.
Yep, yep. And based on the description you have given, would you say virtuals is like Windows and AI16Z is more like Linux?
Well, I mean, I guess if we're doing like the closed source versus open source analogy, then it kind of does is. Although I think it's not as clear cut as well, because I think
Yeah, yeah,
Virtuals is
definitely.
making some of this like open as well, and it's open and permissionless. But yeah, I think they're taking like slightly different sort of like approaches to sort of like building this up towards the future. And I think there's room for like multiple winners. So I don't think like it's going to be a single one that will sort of
Yeah,
like
definitely.
dominate this sort of like entire space.
So the way I describe them in that way is
Mm.
the when the Windows first came about, it was way easier to use than any Linux or Unix variant that was out there. So virtuals is like that anyone can go to the platform and launch an agent. It's super simple. There's a lot of things you cannot do, but most people don't want to do those things. And Linux was something where you had access to the kernel, you had your command line, and you could do anything under the sun. And so Eliza is like that. You can go make changes to the library. You can use like a lot of different tools. You can contribute tools, use other features which are just being built. Uh, so yeah, that's one of the reasons I think I would put in those boxes. But of course, it's not a apples to apples comparison. Yeah. So more recently, you've also been talking about agent swarms. What's that?
So I think agent swarms is basically a sort of like a cool term for basically just saying like that we're going to be living in a world where we're going to have like these like multiple different AI agents,
Mhm,
and the idea is that I think like many of these agents are going to be very specialized. They're going to be doing very specific tasks. Um, and each of them are going to be very good at doing like one thing. And then basically
mhm,
eventually like in order to accomplish a certain goal or certain task, we're going to need like multiple different agents. They are all each specialized in their own specific task in order to do that, right? And in order to get to that, um, we need a lot of like coordination between the agents. And to do
mhm,
that, we need these agents to be able to communicate well with one another, right? Deciding if I were an AI agent, how do I, um, share things with another AI agent? How do I make payment to another AI agent? How do I transfer data and information between these sort of like AI agents? So I think the idea of a swarm is like multiple of these AI agents in a group that actually works together to accomplish a very important and very powerful task, which I think is going to be where the future is definitely going to be. I mean, today, like most of the agents that you see, in fact, like almost all of them, like on Virtuals or Eliza, these are sort
mhm,
of like individual agents, right? They're just mostly working on their own. They have their own um, objectives, their goals,
mhm.
but they aren't working in that sort of like coordinated group, like many of them. Um, so I think this is going to be a bit of the future. I think is um, we are in the early days of getting to that sort of thing. I think there's a lot of like rudimentary um, communication protocols that are already
Mhm.
sort of like there that allows this to sort of like happen. But yeah, I think this is going to be how we get to the next level of like intelligence
Yep,
for
yep.
AI agents.
Definitely agreed. And even at Faction, we are totally into these multi-agentic workflows where there's multiple agents competing with each other, collaborating with each other, and then there's a network of judges which is evaluating their outputs, and they are being rewarded for their work. So a more technical question perhaps: why is it not possible to communicate between agents using like simple API calls like all other microservices based frameworks do? Why does it have to be something special with agents?
So, firstly, I think like AI agents right now is a very heterogeneous space, right? Every agent is using a different kind of like framework.
Mhm,
They're doing things in totally different ways. So there's no like real like sort of like standards right now, especially if you're talking about like in the Web3 space, right? How do you interact with one another? How do you make payments? None of this is sort of like been really sort of like defined yet. I think API calls, potentially are there, but like, I feel like, yeah, we haven't defined that sort of like communication standards that all agents are
mhm.
using. So everyone's doing something pretty
Yep,
different.
yep.
Eventually, someone needs to come together, maybe set standards. I
Mhm,
think some ideas that have been thrown around there, which I think is also interesting, is that, you know, if API calls are almost like yes, it's like the thing, something of the past, right? If agents are so smart and we're going to get to like AGI in the future,
mhm,
why do we even need API calls? Like maybe the language of communication between like different agents is actually just natural language. We can just say, hey, I want to buy this
mhm.
data, and then all these other agents respond to you in natural language. I feel like we probably still need a few more um, levels of improvement of AI to get to that. But I feel like that maybe that's one sort of like possibility. I don't know. What do you think about that actually?
I think it can be even more optimal than the natural language. We make AI interact in natural language because that's what we understand. But if it's agent interacting with other agent, why can't they just communicate in bits? I mean, you need fewer
Mm,
bits to communicate information than you need words, and it's more efficient. You need less memory. It's faster. Um, the only caveat is it will be difficult to for us to debug to understand why something happened the way it happened. But yeah, I think it could become like that, where it kind of happened in one of the experiments where AIs developed their own language and started communicating in that, and kind of gave up on English. So if based on the way we are going, it's a real possibility that could happen.
yeah, I think that's really it makes so much sense, but it's also a somewhat scary thought, right? Can you imagine like these AI starting to have their own way of communicating that we as humans aren't able to sort of like figure
Yeah,
out? And who knows what they're doing behind our backs? Maybe they're
yeah,
plotting to take over the world, and we will only realize it later on. So, oh
yeah,
gosh, I feel like the possibilities here is really quite. There's a lot
yeah.
to think about. I would say.
Definitely. I mean, that's the fun way of like being in this field. Every day is there are new improvements coming, there are new changes happening. Whatever you knew like a few days ago, then a paper comes out which says, "Oh, whatever you thought was wrong, it can be done this way." Like just today or like a day before, we got this DeepSeek new paper where they were able to replicate the results of O1, like even better results with a model that can run on our phones. So these kind of improvements, you don't see them in any other field. It's like super acceleration. And that's the fun part of being in this field. The kind of freedom you get with crypto, you can if you're in web 2, it's it's like super impossible to give permission to get permissions for agents to interact with people's bank accounts. You would be thrown in jail. But in crypto, you can give people wallets. You can give agent wallets, and they are able to do something useful with their wallets. They can pay for things. They can pay for work. So yeah, that kind of freedom, it's not really possible anywhere.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I struggle myself like to try and keep up with the space, um, because like crypto and AI is like probably like 80% AI and maybe like 20% like crypto or less, right? And
Yep,
the
yep.
AI space is just every single week like there's always something new, a new model that's launched, and you know, is it real? Is it better? Sometimes it's very hard to tell unless you actually try and use it yourself.
Yep, yep, yep.
But yeah, it makes it so very exciting, I guess, like to be in such a dynamic space, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Okay, so we have talked about agents, but before there were agents, there was Tao, uh, and it kind of remained stable over time, even though it's like the OG of the space, and they were the first ones who were like, we are gonna train decentralized models. And I think you published a piece around that as well, and this was one of your predictions for 2025 that they will take over after some time. What are your thoughts on that thesis and so on?
Yes, about Bittenser. So Bittenser is always a bit of a polarizing topic. Like everybody has like very different views on it. I think like over the last 6 months, Bittenser has been it's kind of like lost a bit of the narrative, especially with
Mhm.
the AI agents
Yep.
when they took hold. Everyone's attention just went to the agents, right? And Bittenser has been very I would say like relatively slow in terms of like actually embracing AI agents as
Mhm.
part of like some of the things that they are building. But I think as with a lot of things in crypto, like narratives, attention like shifts pretty quickly, and it almost sometimes almost a bit like fashion trends, like or
Yeah.
not. At one time, this is hip and cool, and then after a
Mhm.
while, it's no longer hip. It goes on to something else, and then
Mhm.
a couple of months later it rotates back to the other thing again, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so I think something like that is probably going to happen. And the reason is because like there is still a lot of very cool stuff that's happening on Bittenser. Like Bittenser,
Mhm.
if I were to put it like in a very high level like mental model in my brain, is like there are like various subnets of Bittenser, and every subnet is like an AI startup essentially. And
Mhm.
so maybe there are like 64 of these AI startups
Mm-hmm.
right now. And I think like among these, at least a small handful of them will probably build something that is of substantial value in the world, or at least that is my hope. And I think there are a couple of like interesting things that are coming up for Bittenser as well around things like their dynamic tau, which is
Mm-hmm.
basically I would say one of the pretty major, probably the biggest upgrade they're probably going to undertake in the coming months, and that could really drive a lot of like interest into the Bittenser space, because it
Mm-hmm.
means that there is more to do for an investor than
Mm-hmm.
just buying Tau. Because today, honestly, if you are um, excited and bullish about Tau, but you're not a miner, you're not a validator, and you're not
Mm-hmm.
a subnet owner, basically all you do is you buy your Tau and you just stake it, right? There's not much to do.
Mm-hmm.
But with dynamic Tau, you can actually start to do a lot of very cool stuff by looking at all the different subnets, trying to figure out which are the subnets that are actually producing
Mm-hmm.
good value, and then you can stake your Tau at these subnets, and then basically hopefully you get even more Tau from this. So it becomes interesting for people to start to relook at this whole ecosystem, and they're just like a lot of very smart, enthusiastic like builders in the space that are like fanatics around like the Bittenser ecosystem. So I think
Mm-hmm.
some point this year, I'm not sure exactly when, it'll definitely get a bit of a revival again.
Okay. A bit of a contrasting view regarding Tao, and there are majorly two reasons. One of them is probably subnet incentives. Um, I think right now you're more incentivized to launch your own token separately rather than Bittenser. If the incentives are aligned in a way that Tao kind of helps your token in some way or helps your project in some way more than what it is doing right now, then they'll have a bigger chance of getting some really good projects. Um, and secondly, I think there should be more focus on quality. Right now, it's more Web3 and less AI, where the focus is on just training models, which was good to get started with because you didn't have any infra, a decentralized way of training models. So you have to start with something. But over time, I think you should go with focusing more on quality of models rather than just being able to train models, because we have seen like different projects who have shown us that it's possible to train decentralized model in some way or the other. It's not as efficient as web 2, it cannot be of course, but it's still possible. So I really believe they should focus on quality of these models and make sure these models are usable by everyone. Happy to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I guess like Bittenser is a bit of a funny beast, because like if you think about it, like Bittenser is purely an incentive network. It's an incentive
Mhm,
mechanism, and basically what it does is that by using Tau rewards, it's basically incentivizing like miners, who are basically the people who are creating and running these models, to actually
mhm,
do something and do a particular task. So the idea of like every subnet owner is basically to design some kind of game, right? You want to design an incentive game that actually brings the best miners to deliver the outputs that we actually want.
mhm,
And so essentially what Tau is doing is basically subsidizing the compute cost for an AI startup, right? Instead of
mhm,
having to go and rent your own GPUs and buy your own GPUs, by basically creating a subnet, you can actually have, if you define it correctly, you can actually have people actually provide the compute power, provide the models for you to get to the outputs you want. And then it's
mhm,
your duty, and basically as a subnet owner, is to figure out how you create a business out of this, right? If you have these outputs,
mhm,
how can you create a valuable application that actually produces revenue from that? So I think this is where the gap is still trying to be filled, right? How do
mhm,
you have these models, you have these interesting outputs, how do you actually create that business value, and how do you bring that business value back into the Bittenser network? And that's where a lot of leakage happens today. A lot of leakage is basically the business value is created, but basically is earned by the,
mhm,
it just leaks out, right? None of it goes back into the Bittenser network itself. So
mhm.
finding with some of these like tokenomics revamps, I feel like it probably aligns the incentives better among the different subnets also. I think it's not going to be an easy upgrade. I think there are going to be a lot of like tricky minefields that they will have to navigate. Um, as they get towards this sort of like detail upgrade. But it's definitely something that I think everybody's eyes are going to be on as it comes about. And here it's going to happen in this quarter. So that's like any time in the next like 8 to 12 weeks or so.
Mm-hmm. Yep, yep. Okay, so since we are talking about infra, you have written a lot of pieces about decentralized compute. What are your thoughts on that, and how do they like help out AI projects relative to the centralized compute sources? Because even now you can rent GPUs from most cloud providers, and the prices have gone down over time. How do you think that affects the decentralized compute industry in general?
Yeah, actually, I think decentralized compute is actually one of the sectors which I'm the most bullish on or excited on, like within the crypto AI sector.
Nice.
In the last couple of couple of months, I mean, we already have a couple of these so-called like GPU marketplaces
Mhm,
um, that have grown fairly large, and um, I think people are kind of like discounting like how big this sector can potentially be. I think
mhm,
if you
mhm.
just zoom out a little bit and think about it from a macro view, firstly, I think it's the demand for compute is going to be insatiable, right?
Yeah.
So far, a lot of compute has been spent on training, pre-training, and we're hitting a little bit of limits around pre-training right now. But I think the demand for inference is going to be huge, right? As we see,
Mhm,
AI being used in every single application, as we see this build out happening, as we see the shift towards like test time compute,
mhm,
I can't see a world where we are going to have a lack of or oversupply of like compute power. So I
mhm.
think a few things. I think the current data centers that we have today, just because of the physical and power constraints, they're probably not going to be able to meet the compute demands of the coming months and years. And so,
Mhm.
like many people are going to be turning to these distributed networks as another potential source of getting these sort of like compute power. Especially with inference, you don't need you don't need necessarily the such a top tier sort of like GPUs in order to
Equivalent, yeah.
run some of these like computation things.
Mhm,
I think the other thing that I would also say around like decentralized compute is that if we think about what it takes to build a truly decentralized AI, right? There are a few things. Is compute, is data, and then the AI model,
mhm,
and every single like Web3 AI application, if it wants to be truly like decentralized or truly be part of this so-called like crypto AI thing, like it needs to have a decentralized compute source. Otherwise, like there's always going to be a single point of failure. There's always going to be
yep, yep,
a point where it can be, you can be censored. Your application can be just removed at any point in time. So I think like these networks serve a very important sort of like philosophical um, need as well. If we
mhm.
truly believe that this is the future that we want to aim towards.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely agree with your point that inference is gonna be way bigger than training, especially with models like O1, which do multiple calls while you're using them. The inference is just gonna blow up, and even within the compute. So, which one is it that you're more interested in? Is it the TEs or the regular GPUs?
I think okay. I think it's going to be a mix of both. Like today, honestly, I
Mhm,
think the real demand is that nobody really cares about like truly autonomous AI agents.
mhm, mhm.
Privacy is interesting, but it's also not like the major factor yet, right? Today, because we're in such early days of like the use cases of like AI and AI agents, right? Everyone's just wants to find the right use cases. It doesn't matter, privacy doesn't matter, decentralization doesn't matter so much. So in terms of like the just actual level of demand, um,
Mhm.
just normal GPUs is fine. I think the TE stuff is going to be definitely important as we think about also same thing, like philosophically, if you want to build systems that are private systems that are naturally like sort of like resistance, have some form of verifiability built
Mhm.
into these things, then we definitely need these things. But of course, there are trade-offs, right? There are only certain kinds of hardware that support TEs and all of
Yep,
that.
yep.
So I think both are necessary. Both are important.
Yeah. I would say right now, since the market is changing so quickly, it's probably better to go with normal GPUs because you want to experiment as quickly as possible, use the best possible models, and once the market kind of stabilizes a bit, and there are like specific use cases you're targeting, and being always available, being trustable is the thing you're going for, then probably TEs will become more important. But of course, like they both have their own space in this market. Yeah. So the reason I ask is we have seen different companies taking different paths. For example, I've seen Sentient and Near AI going more with TEs. There are other decentralized AI companies who are going more with GPUs, and I think both of them are really important for the space.
Yeah, I think the demand is, what I would say is that the design space for AI is just so big, right? There are just so many different potential applications. All of them have different requirements, both in terms of like security, privacy,
Mhm.
and so you just need to have that kind of like infrastructure that's available like for anybody to sort of like build these things on. So I think like all of them are really important. Um, yeah, I mean, TEs, okay. I mean, just like since we're talking on this, right? There's just some
Mhm.
like general thoughts on this is that I kind of feel it's a bit of like TEs are why everybody are using TEs now is because it's low sort of like low hanging fruit. Right? It's relatively easy to implement. You are
Mhm.
shifting the problem away from the software side to the hardware
Mhm.
side, and then
Yep,
you're
yep.
just pushing it there, and you hope that the hardware is perfectly fine. But eventually, I think we need to get to some like real um, solving of this problem using some of the other ways, right? I think ZK maybe could be one of this, but it's going to take a while. But
Mhm.
eventually, maybe that's going to be the sort of like idea. But yeah, I just find it very interesting that everyone's like working and using TEs now.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the narratives. My you can trust my agent more than anyone can trust your agent, so my agent is better, something like that. So there was this recent quote I heard from Hasib from one of their podcasts. It was something like, oh no, it wasn't Hasib, it was someone else. So it goes something like, today's decentralized autonomous agents are neither decentralized nor autonomous, and definitely not agents. What are your thoughts around that, and how that's going to change over time?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of true because like most people are basically just like most of these so-called like agents are basically like social media bots with some kind of like token tied to it. I think decentralized for sure.
Mhm.
Many of them are not because most of them run on like cloud services,
Yeah.
centralized cloud services out there. Not that most of them don't run on some kind of like decentralized compute layer just because it's just
Mhm.
a bit more complicated to sort of like set that up. So for sure, neither decentralized nor what was the next thing?
Nor autonomous, and definitely not agents.
Autonomous. Oh yes, yeah. Autonomy is a tough thing. I feel like yeah, the truth is that like most things still require some human in the loop right
Yeah, yeah.
now, right? Because a few things, right? One is that because I still think like most of these AI models are not good enough yet
Mhm.
that they're able to achieve a good level of accuracy. So there's still going to be hallucinations, there's still going to be errors, and if you're working with some a product that requires a good level of accuracy, then you still kind of like want to be able to sort of like check it, make sure it's fine, and help it correct itself, in some way, rather than like it be sort of like truly autonomous. Although the future is there, and in future we
Mhm.
will get to that future for sure, 100%. It's just
Yeah,
a
yeah.
matter of like time and when we'll get there. Um, I'm hopeful more sooner rather than later, but just because like things are developing so quickly, I think we'll definitely it's definitely a future that's not too far away in terms of that autonomy.
Yeah, yeah. So the way I look at it, decentralization is more about cost and the effort it will take to decentralize those models. So can be done, just a more takes a lot of effort, and people don't care about that right now. Being autonomous is not technically possible at the moment, because models hallucinate, and there's a lot of money at stake, so you just can't trust the models right now.
Yeah.
Both are problems, but problems in a different sense. One is a bit easier to solve. The other is like technically not feasible right now. So yeah, but I think we are gonna get better at it over time. Uh, okay, now the one use case that everyone has been hoping for, Def AI. Tell me about it. What is Def AI? What are the major applications in Def AI that you have seen people working on?
You know what? Actually, this is an interesting topic that I was actually hoping someone would tell me more about, because I've always been a bit confused about this. Like this term suddenly came about, I think, like a couple of weeks ago,
Mhm.
and I started seeing people use it. And I mean, for one, firstly, like how do you even pronounce it? I'm not sure. Like to me, it's like I just call it like DeFi because it's like
Uh-huh.
I just pronounce it that way. Some people call it
Yeah.
Def AI and all that. I think we still haven't even figured out like how do we you know pronounce this term, but
Yeah.
in my understanding, is basically the combination of like DeFi and AI, which is basically like these AI agents which are able to sort of like conduct some of these like financial transactions, right? Sometimes using natural language, right? I can tell an agent to go and do a
Mhm.
swap, and then it figures out where to go, which are the smart contracts it needs to interact with, and it goes about
Mhm.
to do it. Um, I think it's super cool. I feel like it's definitely if these things work, it will be a very good like user experience improvement from where we are today with crypto, where I have to go and manually sign every transactions and figure out and make sure that I'm not signing something that doesn't make sense and all of that, right? There is a lot of friction points for people in terms of
Mhm.
interacting with like these DeFi sort of like protocols. Also, um, I mean, in my own sort of like experience, for many of the things I've seen, there are still these DeFi or Dev AI protocols are still in the very early days. I would say like
Yeah.
pretty raw. Like
Uh-huh.
sometimes like you go and use some of these tools and you ask it to do a swap and then it swaps the wrong token. So there are a lot of these like
Mhm.
teething things, problems there. I think the vision is great.
Mhm.
And I think we'll get there. But today's implementations, at least I've seen so far, seems to be rather rough. Um, I think like the one I'm excited about is probably like a Wayfinder, the one by the Parallel team. I think
Mhm.
from what I've seen with the demo so far,
Mhm.
is they've been building for quite a while and it
Mhm.
looks pretty solid. Um, so pretty looking forward to that sort of like launching soon.
Yeah. Yeah. So based on my experience of being in AI for so long, if your task is well defined and can be broken down into instructions, and the same instructions have to be followed every time, AI is probably not a very good choice because, for example, swapping tokens, it's the same time. It's the same thing all the time. You have to hit the same smart contract. You just have to change the number of tokens you want to send or swap, but the process is kind of same. It's a structured environment. Uh, so intelligence is not that useful there. If you want to swap token, you can just do it by pressing a button instead of asking an agent to do the same because it's gonna call the same smart contract. I think where the intelligence become useful is something where you don't know how to do something and you need a lot of data to take a decision. So for example, managing liquidity. So for example, in Uniswap v3 you need to identify where you want to place the liquidity so LPs make money and there's enough liquidity in the market and the trades go as planned. That's a not well defined process. It depends on the market conditions, um, external and internal, the kind of liquidity that is there in the market, the way the orders are coming in right now. So that kind of decision requires a lot of intelligence, and that's where I think AI can be really helpful. And in our last talk we were having a similar discussion with Ilya, and he was talking about uh, agent based prediction markets, because right now you have some people buy the yeses, some people buy the no's, and the money is kind of goes from yes to no's or the other way around. The way this process happens in web 2 betting markets is it's the market maker who gives you the odds, and they are the ones who are deciding the odds and making the market. So those kind of markets work even with low liquidity, but it takes a lot of intelligence to decide what kind of odds you want to give out. So for example, you want to predict if the Trump is going to come up with Bitcoin strategic reserve in the next one day. You need someone who has knowledge of how the world works, what's going on in news, how's Trump been like, to come up with the right odds for this event. And I think that AI is probably better than humans at that, because it has access to all the data that is out there, and it can take a more reasoned and more informed decision than any human can. And even the web 2 betting markets use AI for this. So I think it's just a matter of time where something like this is built in a Web3 space.
Yeah, I think prediction markets are interesting. Well, I guess that my thoughts are that, you know, if these markets always find some kind of like equilibrium, right? There's always going to be a
Mhm.
market equilibrium. So if even if we use AI, what it does is that it makes these market hopefully it makes these markets more efficient, right? So we get
Yep.
to the actual number that's there.
Mhm.
As to how to find an opportunity, then I'm that's where I feel like maybe the opportunity is there right now because like not many people are using AI tools in terms of
Yeah.
like helping them to make these predictions. But in the near future, I think like everybody's going to be using AI to
Mhm.
be like getting involved in these prediction markets. And then what's your edge, right? You have to have a better AI, or you have
Mhm.
to have some better like data sources in order for you to sort of like find that edge in these sort of like prediction markets, because everybody else is going to be using
Yeah.
AI as
Yeah.
well. So I think like today, the people who are using AI probably have a bit of an edge, but soon when everybody's using AI, you still need to find an even better edge as well. And that's usually going to be information, like have some source of information that your
Mhm.
AI has that other people's AI does not have.
Yeah. I think it's quite similar to what happened in TradFi. Initially, people who were using AI to trade had an edge, and they were making a lot of money. Over time, everyone started using AI, and it was more about what kind of alpha you can generate. Is it about your data? Is it about a better fitted model? Is your infra better at placing trades faster? So the end product of this is that markets become more efficient. And if you come up with a strategy which makes market even more efficient, you take your cut out of that. And so just an anecdote, we used to do this at Goldman and the hedge fund I used to work at. And it's not really a good idea to try to predict the market, because you cannot. The markets are really efficient. So it's always better to be on the seller side, where you are the ones who's writing options, and in crypto sense you are the ones who's managing the liquidity, rather than predicting the direction in which the price is going to go, because it's technically impossible to do that all the time. And yeah, it's very easy to lose money there. So I think there's a bigger opportunity would be there in managing liquidity, writing options, rather than trying to predict the market. That's just it's difficult. It cannot be like I ask my AI to do better than certain AI. It's just doesn't work like that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's not
Also another
easy, not easy
narrative.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah, but
go
it's
ahead.
super difficult. So another cool narrative that has come about is DeSci. I think there was a time before when this I think DeSci had a time at one point, didn't go as high as everyone hoped it to be, and now it has come up again. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so DeSci has been I've actually been watching DeSci for quite a while, like even
Uh-huh.
since the last cycle, it was like probably like 2020 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Fighter DAO and all of these, and those the very early days of DeSci, and probably still a very large part of it today is basically around um, it's around fundraising for basically research. I think that has been the major use case of like where crypto actually plays a part. Many of these sort of like research projects, you if you go through the very traditional sort of like grant funding route in
Mm-hmm.
academia, it's going to be extremely difficult to find someone to fund some of these like very early stage research, or research that is not disease driven. For example, like longevity kind of research where there isn't actually any disease that's actually being solved right now. And so you're going to find it hard pressed to get funding through a sort of like very traditional type of approach. So that's why I think like a lot of these things like that goes in the DeSci have been around some of these edges of
Mm-hmm.
like frontier research that doesn't get funded normally. I am personally very skeptical because one is that you need a very clear like expertise in order to like figure
Yeah.
out where the opportunity is in some of these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like many of the people who are investing in stuff like DeFi, they are
Mm-hmm.
investing without the right level of like knowledge and understanding around some of these things that are sort of like happening. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, I spent I come from a medical science background, and I spent quite a lot of time in this area as well. And
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be very difficult to transform an industry, basically academia, that is
Mm-hmm.
extremely entrenched, that in the old ways, right? The people who are still controlling this industry are basically the professors. They are sitting in their ivory towers in the universities and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to get the level of like recognition and credibility. So I do admire the people who have been building this side for a long time. I think they are looking to break through some of these like entrenched barriers that are there, and I hats off, like big respect to them. I hope they are able to accomplish some of these goals. I think the people that came in like more recently in the last couple of weeks or couple of months, who are
Mm-hmm.
sort of like riding on this narrative of DeFi and trying to do stuff. I've seen like some kind of like games where that you buy a token of a particular like a molecule, and they'll use that molecule to treat something. I feel like all these are very on the borderline of like grifty and scammy, and are there just to capitalize people's attention on this to make some money, and they're not really advancing science in any way. So I'm a little no, I think the vision and idea is there. I do think it'll
Mm-hmm.
take quite a while for this industry to sort of like break through.
Yeah, and I think it's also a structural problem. The innovations in science happen by just like 0.0001% of the people. So you need to have that kind of cloud, that kind of a platform to attract those kind of people, and they're like very few of them. And if you miss out on those, it's kind of impossible to have the kind of advances that DeSci people are marketing. And like you said, all the professors, all the PhD students who are capable of such kind of breakthroughs, they are not in Web3, like at least as of now. And just money won't be a big enough incentive for them to come and do this in the way people are imagining this to be. So I think it needs a bit of structural change, better incentives, and maybe then something can happen. But I don't think in the current scheme of things, it's just borderline grifty and scammy, like you said, your words, not mine.
But
So
CZ likes it, so
yeah,
that's
yeah, of
that's been a
course,
big boost for them. So
yeah, yeah,
you know, I,
definitely.
I hope he does something cool in this space.
Yeah, yeah. I think if he's probably the one who can attract some people, then we'll have some early wins to show, and then that would attract more people to the field. So yeah, it's definitely possible, but needs changes. So we are almost towards the end. I would take
Wow.
some questions, and then we can. I have an announcement to make. I'll do that at the end. So Adil, can we get like one or two questions?
Perfect. We have some actually awesome questions from the community, but first, I just want to say to our guest Tank that some people were commenting nonstop that you are the most beautiful man in Web3. So
Oh
just
wow,
basically,
and massive
yes.
thanks to you
So a
guys.
question for you, Tang. This is more on the pragmatic side. So they say, where do you see AI agents having given more tangible solutions in Web 2 or Web 3?
Um,
Like, where do you see them causing more impact? And
Yeah, so I think we are definitely seeing a shift, right? We started with these very entertainment focused agents that aren't particularly productive, but basically they are able to tell funny jokes, they're able to say funny things, they're able to live stream, they're able to post on social media, and then we started seeing like agents that go into things like research and trading, like XPT, which is pretty cool. Um, and then I think now we are seeing like agents, and the ones that I think have I partly find like very fascinating are like um, the agents that can actually build applications, can actually code, can actually fix bugs. And I think that's going to be one of the more productive sort of like use cases that are coming up for these AI agents. So I'm excited about both. Right? I feel like every single vertical in the Web2 space, healthcare, law, or this is going to be transformed by AI agents. But within the Web3 space, I think it's going to be going to be very much focused on the finance side, like the DeFi, Dev AI category that we were talking about just now. I think that's going to be probably the biggest part in the Web3 agent space.
Perfect. Thank you. Shashank, this question for you, and a lot of users
Okay,
ask this.
so today let's just ask with Teng, since we only have two questions, and I'll be
me.
here.
Of course, yeah. So, second question here. Okay, so how do you think the rapid advancements in artificial intelligence, such as generative AI and automation, are gonna shape industries in the future?
Yeah, I think every industry is going to be transformed, right? So let's take for example the software industry, which is probably the first to be changed. Right? I think every single software application that we use today, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, all of this is going to be redesigned with an AI agent at the heart of it. So I think it creates a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs because it's going to be a very major disruption in all these different industries ahead. Some industries are going to move a lot quicker with this AI shift compared to others. Like the more traditional industries that's not very tech inclined and not very tech focused, these would take a lot longer for AI to really make a significant shift or dent in them. And then I think the other thing that I also think about a lot is that the adoption of AI is very much, it's less of a tech problem, but it's more of like a society kind of like sort of like mindset issue as well, right? Like how it's about getting people to want to use this technology. Like for example, one of my friends, company, they have just banned AI. They don't allow anybody to use ChatGPT and all that within their company and organization, right? Because I don't know why, but I think they're probably afraid that either the AI might say something wrong, or maybe have some bad press or something like that, right? But so I think these are the barriers that we have put in place ourselves that actually limit some of the adoption of AI in some of these different industries. So I think it's going to be very much a mixed bag. I think the companies and enterprises that adopt faster, they probably be more positioned to dominate and win in the competitive landscape compared to those that are pretty skeptical about AI.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. I think that was all the questions. So now the big announcement everyone has been waiting for.
Oh, wow.
So for the past few weeks, we have given access to our testnet for our base rock stars, where you worked really hard, engaged with the community, talked about us on social media and all the other platforms. And you have participated in more than 300,000 sessions so far in just a few weeks, even though we gave out access to only a few hundred. That number is way beyond my expectations. I never in my wildest dreams I could think so many sessions in such a short amount of time. So really thankful to all of you. So today we are making our testnet live, and we are also launching our point system, where you can directly see how your contribution to the platform, how your agents are growing, and how much you have contributed to the whole platform through your whole journey on FractionAI. So yeah, it's gonna go live soon in like a few minutes, and you'll be able to access it, play around with it, create your agents, make those agents compete with each other, and unlock useful features over time. And yeah, this is just the first step in our journey of allowing everyone to create agents that create valuable data, solve valuable problems, and are monetizable. So thank you all for the support that we have seen so far. And now the platform is open for everyone. So go with your heart's content and participate as much as you can.
Thank you all for joining us. We'll announce soon the link, and also we'll please follow Teng in Chain of Thought. We'll leave the details as well. And
so regarding Chain of Thought, if you're not reading it every week, you are missing out on a lot. I mean, you should not be in AIX crypto if you're not reading Chain of Thought.
You too kind. Yeah, no, thanks a lot for that, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So definitely follow Teng on Twitter, Chain of Thought on Twitter, and subscribe to their newsletter. It's awesome.
Thank you all, and see you guys next week.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us.